This video has been created by Great IT Courses. It's a part of a mathematics course that will teach you mathematics step by step from basic algebra all the way up to calculus. For more information or subscribe to the course, please read the video description. Thank you. So in this video we want to talk about the midpoint formula. Well, the midpoint formula is used when you have a situation like this. Let's say you have this is the Cartesian coordinate system, and this is the x-axis, this is the y-axis, and so you have a line segment in the Cartesian in the plane, and this line segment has a starting point and an end point. So let's call this the starting point, this point the end point. Now, I basically what we want to figure out here is what is, and let's for the starting point, let's say that the coordinates of this point are x1, y1. The coordinates of this point are x2, y2. That I already know. Now let's all we want to figure out here is what is the coordinates of the midpoint of this line segment. Let's say this is the midpoint, let's call it M, and I want to figure out based on the coordinates of the based on the x and y coordinates of these 2 points, what are the x and y coordinates of the point M. So in order to figure this out, you need to you could basically drop a perpendicular from this point to the x-axis, and then you know that if the coordinates of this point are x1, y1, then this point on the x-axis is basically x1. And if you drop a perpendicular from this point to the x-axis, then what you would get is basically you would end up on this point on the x-axis, and so this is here basically the value of x is x2 based on the x coordinate of this point. Excuse me. So now I know that this point M is in the middle of this line segment. So if I drop the perpendicular from point M to the x-axis over here, if this is a perpendicular from point M to the x-axis, then this point over here is going to be exactly between x1 and x2. And so let's call this, for example, x3 to simplify things. So that means that the length of the line x1, this length from x1 to x3 is equal to the length from x3 to x2. So now I want to figure out what the value of x3 here is in terms of x1 and x2. And so in order to figure that out, you need to first of all I need to basically figure out how to get to the point x3 on the x-axis. So if I were to get to the point x3 on the x-axis, what I need to do is first I need to come this distance to x1. So that's not a problem. I already know that this distance is x1. So, and x1 is something that I want to have in my answer, so that's okay. So this part of the problem is solved basically. But in order to actually get to the point x3, the problem is that I need to get from x1 to x3, and I don't know the length between x1 and x3 in terms of x1 and x2. So in order to figure that out, so now all I need to find out is the length between x1 and x3. What if I can find that out, then the problem is basically solved. Now you already know that the length between x1 and x2 is basically the length of the line over here, from here to here. Between x1 and x2 is basically x2 minus x1. You already know this. This is basically simple. So this is x2 minus x1. And we said that x3 is exactly between, in the middle of x1 and x2. So then this distance, x1 to x3, is going to be, this distance is going to be x2 minus x1 divided by 2. This is going to be the distance between x1 and x3. And we already said that, we already know that this distance from here to here is x1. So then the distance from the origin to x3 is basically the distance, this distance from origin to x1, which is basically x1. That's already okay. And the distance between x1 and x3 is this distance over here, which is x2 minus x1 whole divided by 2. So basically x3 then is equal to x1 plus this distance, half of the distance between x1 and x2. So it's x2 minus x1 divided by 2. And so you can simplify this. You can write this as 2. So 2x1 plus x2 minus x1. And this would be equal to basically 2x1 minus x1 is x1 plus x2 divided by 2. So this is the coordinates of the point x3 in terms of x1 and x2. And that's what we were looking for, because I already know what x1 and x2 are. And so now that I have x1 and x2, I can simply plug them in and calculate the coordinates, the x coordinate of the point M. So by the same logic, we can actually calculate the y coordinates of the point M. So again, M is in the middle of these of this starting line of this starting point and this end point. So if I drop the perpendicular to the y-axis from this point, would be something like this, and this point on the y-axis is y1. Again, dropping a perpendicular from this point to the y-axis, this is y2. And dropping a perpendicular from this line to the y-axis would be, let's call it y3. Now, the only thing that I need to figure out here is I already know that I want to figure out how to get from the origin to y3. So in order to do that, first I need to get to y1, which is already solved, which is already okay. But the only thing that I need to figure out is how to get from y1 to y3. That I don't know. But the thing that I do know is what is the distance between y1 and y2. So I can basically, the distance between y1 and y2 is basically this distance up right here. Distance right here, and this distance is basically this is y2 minus y1. You know that y2 minus y1, and y3 is exactly in the middle of y2 and y1. So then this distance is basically half of this distance. So it's y2 minus y1 divided by 2. So in order to get to the point y3, first I have to get to the point y1 and then go this distance, and this distance is already calculated, y2 minus y1 divided by 2. And so the whole distance from the origin to point y3 would be y1. But I'm running out of time here. So it would be y1 plus y2 minus y1 divided by 2. And if you simplify this, you will get again the same thing, which is y1 plus y2 divided by 2. And this is y3. So the midpoint formula based on this, so this is y, so this is the y coordinate and this is the x coordinate. So based on these two pieces of information that we got, the midpoint formula is basically the x coordinate of the midpoint is x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and the y coordinate is y1 plus y2 divided by 2, and that is called the midpoint formula.